Barbara Miller with that report. Now, Australia's only just beginning to feel the budget pain, but Britain has already faced years of austerity. So what are the lessons we can learn from the UK experience?
Julia Unwin is the chief executive of one of Britain's leading philanthropic foundations, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. She's also the author of Why Fight Poverty, and it's a great delight to have her with us in the studio. Many thanks for your time. Let's start off, because I guess you're watching Australia go through the same kind of pains that the British government went through, this need to tighten up, particularly targeting people on welfare. What can we learn from it?
Well, all governments have to find ways of managing their budgets, and our economy is changing as fast as anyone can imagine, and that's the same in Australia as is in the UK. What worries me is if the budget tightening affects the poorest people in the country, we can end up with a very uncomfortable position where the poorest people are seen as something completely different. None of us understand the risks that we all face, and we behave as if being poor is their fault. Actually, any of us could end up being poor, and a civilised society, however much we're tightening up our budgets, needs to have a safety net. It needs to have something to protect people against the risks that we all face. What we've learnt in the UK is that benefit tightening up has, for some people, got them into work, but for others, it's created even more distance between them and their chances of ever getting to work.
You've had some meetings with the government this week.
I have.
And what have you talked about, and how has that gone?
Well, we've talked about the difficulties governments face now, of how they manage this welfare budget, which risks getting bigger and bigger as we all get older, and we have more disabilities, and we face more challenges. And I've tried to talk to them about some of the risks I think there are in taking money away from people and making benefits a condition of certain sorts of behaviour.
Now, the work for the dole, or working for benefits, you're saying that was successful to some degree. How important is it then to try and get long-term unemployed off the dole and into some form of meaningful work?
Working is obviously a better thing for most people. But if the work is so badly paid that you are still poor, and half the households in the UK who are in poverty, by our definition, are going out to work, if they're still poor, then they're going to feel it's a pretty rough contract they've struck. For some people, a bit of work experience can get them on the track to work, but what really matters is the nature of the work they're going to get long term.
And are there the jobs, this is the question everyone's asking here, what will people be doing?
We can promise jobs, but unless there are real jobs that give people security and a sense of place and a feeling that they can build their life, they don't do any more than just trap them in deeper poverty.
What have you made of the language that's been used from the government in the media about trying to get across these measures?
Well, we've had exactly the same language, slightly different words in the UK, but the same meaning, creating a big difference between people who are working and people who are on benefits. In the UK, people are going in and out of work all the time, never out of poverty, but in and out of work. They are lifting as much as they possibly can. To cast the vast majority of people who are on benefits as lazy and idle is insulting to them and doesn't reflect the reality.
I'm also interested in your reflections on post-GFC, which of course have been two very different experiences for the UK and Australia. How was potentially that exacerbated, because at the same time your government was trying to tighten the belt? Did that make things worse? Did it prolong the recession?
I'm not an economist, and I know economists are arguing about this. I know that we went through a very deep and long recession. We risked going into a triple dip, and we didn't, and that's fantastic. As we return to growth, which we're doing now, faultingly after a long time, my concern is that large numbers of people living in poverty, living below the poverty line, are a brake on that return to growth. We need growth and prosperity in the UK. We can't afford it if they're people with too little to live on.
Now, you did hold a place at the head of a refugee council at one time. I'm not sure if you're hearing the news that we were reporting this morning. There's funding that the Refugee Council in Australia thought might be there, won't be there. How have you seen that part of our community being discussed?
I think cuts to community organisations at a time when there's the greatest need always need to be done with real care, and they need to be done on the basis of the evidence of the performance of those organisations and the needs they're meeting. We've been through a period of cuts to community organisations in the UK, and we've lost some of our most important organisations. I don't know enough about this case.
I'm interested too, because you come from a philanthropic background, or you're working for a philanthropic background. Australia doesn't have quite that same kind of tradition. How much did that sector pick up some of the shortfall where government was cutting?
There's no country where the philanthropic cent can really replace the taxpayer dollar. Wherever you are in the world, it's going to be very small. I hope what we did in the UK was continue through difficult times to collect the information, to gather what was happening, to shine a bright light on some things that maybe some people didn't want us to know about, and to draw attention to what was happening. That's what philanthropy can do. It can't replace the taxpayer.
And were you received well? Were your discussion a fruitful experience with the government?
I think so. People have been so welcoming and so friendly. I think I've been received well.
Oh, that's good.
Terrific. Lovely
Thank you.
to talk to you. Thanks for coming.
Love to meet you both.